The Starside Prophecy by Tirri. Read by the author. Chapter 43. Harper's Bazaar. British Airways was thriving and I was working a lot. I was very glad of the distraction and the money. I tried to do a good job at forgetting about all the things I was better off not remembering. I was becoming good at that. I loved to sunbathe and swim in all the luxury pools in all the luxury hotels, and my muscles were nicely toning. I had recently purchased a Walkman, and as I was busy turning my pink skin brown, I listened to a lot of music, escaping into the poetry and the melody in order to avoid my own thoughts. I was very happy the old decade, which had been trying to say the least, would soon be gone, and as New Year's Eve approached, I decided that a new decade meant a new beginning. This declaration fortified my perspective to a level I had not expected. My past was my past, fuck it, I said as I packed my suitcase. I would not have described myself as emotionally balanced at that moment, but I was in better shape than I had been the previous year. When I checked in for a trip to Barbados, I met a stewardess named Alison. She was working in first class and I was working in club. Alison and I soon got talking, and she told me that she too had recently split up with her boyfriend and was looking for a flatmate. She had just rented a furnished flat in West London from a friend of hers who had recently married. "How about it?" she said that night over a tequila sunrise in Bridgetown. "Yeah, great," I said before ordering another drink to celebrate. I had never lived in London, and the thought excited me. Although my new bedroom was small, my bed was a double and it was soft and bouncy. The living room of my new home was tastefully decorated and was great for hosting dinner parties with its well-fitted kitchen and dining area, but there was a huge downside that rattled my senses quite literally. The flat was directly under the flight path. I had disregarded this little detail when I had eagerly agreed to move in. "Oh my God," I said to myself while lying in bed on the first night with the windows rattling and the noise from hell's bowels deafening me. "Are you fucking serious?" Dealing with the noise from the engines of the plane on their final approach was high up in the top 10 list of most bizarre experiences I'd ever had. I would get back from a night flight exhausted, or I would be trying to rest for an upcoming flight, knowing that every 90 seconds I would be reminded that the noise from the engines a few hundred feet above me might very well snatch what was left of my sanity. I was desperate for sleep, which was becoming the rarest of commodities, like the Mona Lisa, and had I owned the painting, I would have traded it for 12 hours of unconsciousness, that's for sure. When the Concorde landed, I would laugh the laugh of a hysteric and then wince as the pictures on the wall shook, as if I was living in a never-ending earthquake. I longed to be back at Doddenall's in my single bed, with the noise of a few cows mooing and a few crows squawking. Despite the absurdity of the noise, I liked living in London. Alison and I had totally different schedules, which meant we didn't see that much of each other. This made sharing a flat an almost perfect scenario. On one of the rare occasions our schedules did collide, Alison and I exchanged facts about ourselves over a bottle of wine and a shepherd's pie. Ali told me that her father had been a colonel in the army and was respected and admired, and her mother was his proud wife and well regarded by the other wives by virtue of her association with him. Alison's childhood had consisted of many moves to many army bases, most in Germany, and her childhood sounded adventurous and idyllic in an exploratory sort of way. But it didn't take me long to surmise that as a middle child, the focus had not been on Alison, but on the esteemed life she was born into. I imagined Alison as a child screaming, "What about me? What about me?" As we got to know each other, I realised that Alison, above all else, craved admiration. Admiration that her father, the colonel, received just by entering a room. To be admired seemed to be Alison's only objective, in fact, and she busied herself cultivating and bestowing upon the world a glittering personality as a means of extracting that. When I had first met Alison a few weeks previously, I thought she was bright and shiny, with an exultant spirit radiating from her core in a way that seemed almost superhuman. To be in the vicinity of Alison's sparkle was intoxicating. But I soon realised that Alison was not content with just being admired. She wanted to be adored, swooned over, and highly spoken of by all those she compelled to notice her. She wanted to be thought of as quick-witted, liberal and clever, and most people would have described her as all these things, but they didn't know her. Few were able to see through the veneer she had spent many years polishing. Alison did not want to be herself, because what she saw simply didn't impress her. Her facade was far more impressive, refined and sophisticated, and by exhibiting it, she was able to glean admiration from others without anyone suspecting that what lay beneath was just the same self-doubting little girl that she herself has also tried not to notice. When all the adoring onlookers, friends, acquaintances or passengers fell aside and Alison was just sitting at home in front of the TV, she fidgeted incessantly. Without a social occasion to feed her need to feel fabulous, she flipped through a copy of Harper's Bazaar in order to reassure herself that fabulous people were indeed looking back at her, and while she was staring back at them she would will the phone to ring. When it didn't, she would toss the magazine aside and get out her address book. It was time to start phoning all her friends, and once she had gone through the list, more obscure acquaintances would get a surprise call. She would dial the number in a brooding mood, and as soon as her call was received, she revved up and became Alison, the debonair girl with life at her feet. If she got their voicemail, she assumed her target was out having a good time, and this would compound her feelings of not being popular. She would have likened not being popular to being cursed. She would have dealt with leprosy better. I could read Alison like a book, and sometimes wondered how it was I could see what others seemingly couldn't. Alison did not know I was penetrating her core, but I was aware that I sometimes made her feel uncomfortable. She once sent a piercing look my way and told me she thought I was a coiled spring. I did not press her for what she meant, but I realised I had felt exactly that way, like a coiled spring, all my life. One Saturday evening when I was packing my suitcase for an early morning Sunday check-in, one of Alison's friends had taken a rain check on a previously arranged dinner date, and Alison was frantic. She busied herself in the living room trying to secure a backup plan, but nothing materialised. The ugly truth for Alison was that she was home on a Saturday night, which was absolutely intolerable. Life must be a social whirl, and when it wasn't, it evoked feelings of inadequacy so venomous that I thought she might combust. I went to bed early that night, but I knew Alison was sitting out in the living room with all her options for a night out exhausted, and I knew Alison was swishing her leg back and forth without noticing she was doing it. She did this a lot, automatic leg swishing, often very speedily, the movements of her leg an indication of how uptight she felt. The more forceful her feelings of inadequacy, the more forceful the swishing. She would chain smoke too. Although I never felt personally threatened when it was down to the wire like this, I found the atmosphere in the room hostile and needed to get away from her. Alison and I were rostered a few trips together over the space of the coming 18 months, and we had a lot of fun on all of them, but home alone with her superiority-inferiority complex fully activated, she could make me very uncomfortable. I felt very sorry for Alison because her strident attempts to project her fabulousness required a great deal of effort, and for this she had to endure repercussive bouts with a pendulum swing. With the assistance of medicine and several leaves of absence, she was only ever able just to deal with her depression, and the many counsellors she sought out and wooed could never pinpoint the cause that I somehow could. The still small voice residing within me said that Ali needed to feel fabulous in order to feel worthy, and the day-to-day normality of life would be a real barrier to her finding happiness. I once prayed that she might hear her still small voice beneath all that fabulousness.